So we have with loving kindness for all, cause harm to none. In the initial verse, when we have put an end to and exhausted all evil and eliminated the bondage of afflictions, and obviously these are all inherent in us because of the being in samsara for so many innumerable lifetimes. So our cultivation is to eliminate that. And our true substance resonates with the universe, and our innate enlightenment harmonizes with its vastness. So we have a situation whereby we have these true substance which are inherent in us, but we have also affliction which are also in us. So what it goes is that the true suchness, it's intrinsic within us, but it's all buried by this bondage of afflictions. So at the Deer Park, when the Buddha first turned the Dhamma view in the Deer Park, all those who took joy in the small were transformed by the Dhamma. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Like children born from the Buddha's speech, and that being children born from the Buddha's speech, meaning we got awakened by the Dhamma. So earnestly put an end to and exhaust all evil and all afflictions, so the delusions of ignorance will no longer be able to disrupt our minds. So our minds are being obscured by all this, their powers of incrustation that we have gathered over the many lifetimes. So we can't, our mind not able to think rightly. By observing his behavior, the elder could tell that he did things earnestly and as good moral conduct. People who mindfully engage in spiritual practice and those with even understanding and views are very different. His moral conduct was so wonderful. It was very well behaved. You see, this is the point about changing our character. And, you know, virtues cannot be practiced in pretentiously. It will show in the conduct of a person, the way he talks, the way he speaks, even the way he writes. And I'm sure you all have come across many situations like this. So in very much it's the same way in the Searchy family. I think we also be mindful that sometimes when we do work you know, much that we have the very good intention to do work, but in the process of which we unknowingly may have irked others. So we got to be very mindful of our behavior because it shows out. And what is being shown out, it's what's lacking within. So the initial fruit of spiritual practice is Sotapanna, which Ashanata Kaudini, Kaudina, if I remember correctly, he was actually in the early days, he was actually a teacher to the young Shittata. And so when they went and the passage of 6 years of ecstatic practice, we went round and he met him again, and they were practicing together. So it was all 6 of them. But obviously then at the time, Shittata decided to come off from his meditation. That's when all the 5 abandoned him. When he engaged in spiritual practice and renounced the lay life, when we engage in spiritual practice and renounce the lay life, we must relinquish loving affection. So this is alluding that at some point in time, we will have probably taken the monastic life. We want to go towards enlightenment. So we must first see with familiar relationship, which is small love. We go beyond limited love in order to embrace the great love. This is the only way the Buddha could control the strain onwards, and which was what we did. So the lessons learned. We should earnestly rein in our roots and very clearly distinguish between things. And so clearly distinguish between things is that, like I said just now, sometimes in the process of us helping others, we could also be hurting others unknowingly. So we need to be very mindful, like I said, we practice. It's easy to practice outside in, right? Because we go in there, we practice, we do good and things like that. But it's the inner cultivation that sometimes we may have overlooked. And it's the same way when we look into the mirror, we don't like what we see, so we put on cosmetics, right? We make up, but deep inside, we haven't changed yet. So the Gama Sutra stated with loving kindness for all. We cause harm to no one, and that is what, so we must not hurt anyone. And that is in itself is a practice. And that's why we need to be mindful of what we say and what we do. We must exercise compassion, otherwise with people and things in this world, and we give rise to an inherent thought, and they will be harmed. This is a lack of wisdom, which is ignorance. So if you want to understand the way, our mind works, our mind, we may have an unwholesome thought, but that's reflected in our demeanor. And that demeanor is part of a person's character or moral conduct. We should not hurt people, objects, or matters, but instead be patient like the earth. The earth has been very patient. Nature has provided us, and yet we consume the earth, and we hurt the earth at the same time. So then we will keep cause brahmanas, and which are spiritual practitioners. If we are able to of achieving this, then we have attained the initial fruit to mean entering the stream of practice, the stage of entrance to the practice of the path. These are the stream enterers. Though we have eliminated illusions of views, though we have attained the initial fruit and cut off the illusions of views, we still have the illusion of thinking. The power of thinking is still insufficient. So this remnants of thinking that we have, and that's like delusion, that we got to be very, very mindful of. So into this contemplation and relating to and trying to resonate to what Master is saying today, that we must make sure that we're very mindful that we cause no harm, and yet we have to do good at the same time. So I will share with you this contemplation. Cessation is the virtual ending by eradicating all afflictions, and that's like delusion. That the afflictions that we have, the cause-like afflictions that we have, will be reflected in our character. But what is but more difficult to really see of ourselves is our dust-like delusion, and this usually resides in our subtle thoughts. So another thing in life, to uproot all the innumerable evil and blind passions, which is in your bodhisattva vow, which is your second vow. When you do, you are no longer hurting in your ways of thoughts, words, and deeds, because when we uproot all those blind passion or that's like delusion. So when your thoughts are being addressed, your words and your deeds will flow accordingly. So hurting never enables you to extinguish delusion, attachment, and unwholesome habitual tendencies that have obscured you from seeing. So what is this seeing that I'm referring to here? It's not seeing with your eyes, but we see with your inner eyes. So a relationship following from that, practice in a relationship, you're never hurting, you find no differences with people because there's no more internal boundaries within oneself. So there's no discriminating, no distinguishing, no differences. So in ever helping, you are just human. So in ever caring, you have great love. That's what Master was trying to teach us in Sati. So in always serving, you have none of yourself. And this is what the non-self, the Master sometimes talk about. So therefore, you practice with nothingness. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Kanin so much, Brother Chin, for the great sharing and the marvelous contemplation always.